All right, Lori here after an awesome day. We had an office party, and T and I got to bowl together, and he was terrific. But he was not quite as good as Kyle in my office, who wowed us all with over 200. Anyway, we're going to talk today about labor unions and employee management relationships. And to start off with this slide, which you can hopefully see. I'm sorry that you're not going to get Lori drawings today, but you are going to get Lori slides. So we're going to go over quickly the history of labor unions. They were originally created by workers to protect themselves from unsafe or unhealthy work conditions. The book has a little blurb about the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire, which was a little over 100 years ago and was a terrible tragedy. And it did highlight the need for unions to push for safer work conditions and fairer wages. They also needed to fight for fair treatment across employee types. And another thing they wanted to do was to gain political power. That might not have been their original objective, but it certainly came into the picture quite early on. Unions started as craft unions. They were temporary and usually devoted to a single issue, but though that quickly grew into a unification of skilled workers, they became the AFL, and unskilled workers followed them, and that was the CIO. The two organizations merged in the 1950s, and union growth influenced by both law and public opinion throughout time. And there's a great blurb in the book about the public opinion, about the laws that helped to build unions. Without those laws, unions would not have had quite the powers that they do. All right, let's talk today about unions today. U.S. unions are declining in membership. They were 36% of private workers back in the 50s, and they are now just a little under 7%. And over 50% of union members are now government workers. So the private sector has really reduced their union membership significantly. We don't really know whether this is because of a shift of workforce and changes in the type of work being done and the way work is being approached, or whether it's because the issues that unions originally formed to address have been largely resolved via law. Another question that many people bring up is, do unions persist now because they are their own business? It was not very clear in the book, but each union member has to pay union dues, and those union dues go to the union organization, and there are people who are full-time employed by the union organization to do both negotiations and to manage the union. So they became their own firm with a life of their own. Unions are sensitive, and they are sensitive to the law that determines how unions can operate within companies and to public opinion. Currently, private sector workers are fairly unhappy with government workers' salaries and benefits. We saw that in Wisconsin, where the governor tried to roll back pensions and pay and collective bargaining for unions, including teachers. What unions want today now, and that pressure is going to continue to be felt in many states. What unions want today? Well, mostly they want job security. They want retention of their benefits. They're trying to avoid avoid givebacks, which is where they give up pay or benefits that they've already gotten. And they also want new members. They've declined so much in membership that and the members are pretty old. I think the average is in the 50s to 60s, and they don't have very many young 18 to 24-year-old members. So that's what they're, as an organization, that's what they're attempting to do. Let's talk a little bit about tactics that are engaged in by unions and by management when there is a conflict. Unions can strike, which means they don't go to work, and that can be very effective. However, public safety workers cannot strike in many states, but they do effectively strike using what they call sick-outs, or quote-unquote the blue flu, which was coined because police officers are not allowed to strike, but they all managed to get the flu on the same few days. And so many police precincts were understaffed during that time. They could also engage in a primary boycott, which means they won't buy and ask others not to buy products of companies that are having union disputes. However, secondary boycott is not allowed, so you can't. They can't advocate a boycott of a retail store that sells products made by a firm that is under a primary boycott. Hot topics in employee and management relations. This is your last slide. You're almost done. Executive compensation right now, the average compensation for a CEO is a publicly traded company is 400 times the wage of the lowest paid worker. That seems pretty significant. Peter Drucker said that he didn't think that CEOs or top executives should be paid more than 20 times. Somewhere in there is the right number. I'm not sure 20 is it, but I'm pretty sure 400 times is pretty large. How does it get so large? Well, they get salary, but that's not it. It actually comes from stock options and restricted stock. And stock options are an opportunity to buy stock at a certain price called the strike price at a time in the future. And if the executives can make the stock price rise above the strike price, then they can execute they can execute those options and buy the stock at the lower price and realize an instantaneous gain. And then they also have restricted stock, which means they get stock that they can't have to hold on to and can't sell for a period of time. And all of that equals big money. Also, they have, most CEOs have negotiated into their contracts pretty lucrative golden parachutes or severance packages. And so you saw that even from the book, even people who were working for really troubled firms ended up with huge packages when they left, despite the mess they left behind. And maybe we'll work a little bit on that in class. Pay equity is another topic versus comparable worth. And the question is, are women or minorities paid the same as their counterparts of people who are doing the same job? We're not quite there yet, at least on gender equity, but the gap is closing. Sexual harassment, that's where you either are being overtly sexually harassed, which is quid pro quo sexual harassment, suggesting that if you do X, Y, Z as a sexual favor, you will get a raise or a promotion or something like that. There's also hostile work environment, where you are working in an environment which is filled with sexual innuendos and jokes or topics that are inappropriate for mixed company, that sort of thing. And you can file those lawsuits at the EEOC. Child care and elder care, huge issue. The book seems to imply that companies should be providing free child care. The question I would ask is, and will you also be providing free elder care? I think that that's a huge burden to ask companies to take on. Certainly companies can work with their employees to help them through those difficult years, both as parents and as caregivers for their adult parents. But I am not sure, this is my opinion, I am not sure that it is the company's job to provide those particular benefits, particularly because not every employee needs those benefits, and I think some employees would argue that they shouldn't have to pay for them. Drug testing, they're both drug testing prior to getting your job and also random drug testing while on the job. Very important topic, and you will find that most large companies do drug testing, and you will want to find out more about that in plenty of time so that you can take actions necessary to make sure you pass that drug test as you go out into the workforce. Violence in the workplace, nothing to belittle. It's a tremendous problem. Securing the workplace is very difficult for companies. You want to have an open work environment. You want to have people feel comfortable and safe while at work. A lot of trade-offs there. So that's it for this, and I'll see you in class tomorrow. Bye.